guys that I know, again, I was telling someone he's the current chairman of the North Dakota Grazing Lands Coalition, was North Dakota's first Leopold Conservation Award winner. The Blackleg Ranch was. Along that same year, they were the Environmental Stewardship Award winner, the national winner. And so the accolades are long. Jerry's very well connected and influential in ag in North Dakota. Again, I talked this morning about practicing what you preach, and of course here's a perfect example of a leader doing these things to promote soil health and regenerative agriculture. Jerry's going to talk about, you know, Stacking Enterprises and all that they've got going on. It's a whirlwind. I wonder somehow how he gets through a day, but we'll let him. I'll turn it over to Jerry, but again, Jerry Doan.
Thanks, Daryl. Welcome everybody to the ranch here, and I know a few of you, but it's always oh, sure.
Noisy one. Picking your belt or already one. Right there. Okay.
Work? Yes, no? Maybe I'll hold it on.
Yeah.
Can you hear it?
No, not yet. Something's not on.
Go? All right. Oh, yeah. Again, thanks to Daryl and Jay here. Great friends. They've done a lot on this place. Welcome, everybody. I know a few of you have maybe been here or heard me talk or whatever, but it's always an honor to see you again. And I apologize. I suck at names, so I'll try to remember faces. But, and to the rest of you, thanks for coming. It's good to see you. And if I was truly this, I don't know what you said, how
Whatever
such
it was,
a strong
it was very
power for
eloquent.
agriculture, we wouldn't have so damn many problems. That was true. I keep trying, though. Well, while we're standing up, maybe a brief history, maybe more down there. This place was started in, my great-grandfather was a Canadian citizen, came out of Canada in 1880, which was, he actually was in Kansas before he was in what was then Dakota Territory. We don't really know the story. Maybe you guys kicked him out, but he was on an 1880 census in Kansas and then came back. I'm sure it was the opportunity for land in the homestead. You know, it was still Dakota Territory. 1882, he started a homestead here, and, you know, those were wild times. There was still Indian wars going on in this country, and, you know, I always think, as goofy as the country is, I try to put myself in his shoes. He lived in a sod house, trying to stay warm and put food on the table in the northern Great Plains. Had to be worse than it is now, as stupid as it is. But, so I remind myself of that every day because, you know, the world's a little wild, and agriculture is changing, and some really good. But quite honestly, we forgot the soil health principles in North Dakota. Since I was a kid, I never seen the wind erosion that we saw this year, and it just, us guys have talked about it. I just can't believe it. But it's, you know, we could talk all day about the politics that's causing some of that, and the wild land values, and the folks that don't seem to care as much as I know you guys do, or you wouldn't be here. So anyway, we're really weird in that I've got 4 kids, and they all went off to college across the United States, all worked somewhere, and all ended up back here, and all wanted to be involved in agriculture. The 3 boys, well, it's great, believe me, but it is challenging, as you well know. Families aren't perfect. You know, we kill each other at least twice a day. I used to say once a day, but I think it's up to twice a day. And my daughter's not directly involved in the operation or the ownership and all that, but she does help with some of the entities. But the 3 boys are all involved, and I'm very honored to have that happen. This is a big place. It's 20,000 acres. We run a lot of cattle, a lot of buffalo, and one of the things that you're standing in is these winter feed costs are killing us in the livestock industry, and so could we, Mr. Feard got us into cover crops, and quite honestly, it wasn't working all that good, not much diversity, and I don't know, I thought, what's the hype? I wasn't as good as Dakota Lakes down there and didn't know all that stuff. But so one day we sat down and said, what do we really want to do here and what's the point? And so we had 3 goals. Number 1, could we get rid of or at least cut these winter feed costs back? Number 2, could we build back some of this really depleted cropland that when I grew up, it was wheat and summer fallow, black summer fallow, that I would say blew to South Dakota, but it might have got clear to you guys. I'm not sure. It just, you know, and you'd get sent out to do something about it and dig it up one more time. And, you know, a lot of it shouldn't have been broke up in the first place, but it was. And I'm not trying to trudge on the older generations. Let's face it, government programs push some of that stuff as well, and they did what they had to do. And then the third thing, we run a hunting outfitting business here, Rolling Plains Adventures. It's nationally acclaimed, been on most of the national hunting shows. And can we propagate the wildlife? And even if you're not in business doing that, it's a great public tool to get the people behind us. And I'm happy to report that on all 3 of those, we've been really successful. Our goal here is to never feed a bale of hay to a cow on this ranch. Also got to remember, we live in North Dakota. That isn't always that simple. But we didn't feed through 200-inch snowfall years, but it didn't all come at once. And those cows have been spoiled. We've spoiled them. You get them back to digging, they'll dig through that snow and they'll do just fine. Now we had to change some things. We had to bring our cow type down. We had to move our calving to May and June, get back to a grass system. But what have we done in the cattle business in the United States? Look at any graph of cow weight, of input costs. I just looked at the farm business management stuff for North Dakota, and I always think those guys are probably way better than a lot of the other folks, but they're approaching $800 cow costs. It's over $500 just feed costs. When I can go through a winter, it's $200 per cow savings. Last year it had been $500 because hay is through the roof. Last year our cover crops weren't worth a dang. These aren't the greatest ones I've ever grown. We had really good moisture early. We haven't had any rain for a month and a half. And the grasshoppers are terrible. And one drink, of course, this stuff is resilient. It'd jump a foot if we could get a rain, but we're struggling with that. But it's made a big difference to us. Last year, what I was going to say was we went to February 15th without feeding a bale of hay to the old cows. We pulled the young cows, we pulled the calves, and we put them in the lot. But it was still a big savings to us. So if you're going to try to bring the next generation back, which we generally suck in agriculture, and I just got lucky, this is a big deal. And yet, I gave a talk in Richardson once. I don't know if you guys were there. This popped into my head. I remembered a lot back then, and I started it out. It was a good year, no matter what. And I rented out 1,000 acres of cropland the first day because I couldn't make it work. And you know how much peer pressure that was on me? I could hardly take it. The neighbors, he's going broke. Yeah. Ha ha ha. You know, and it's sad we're like that, but it is the way we are. And yet that was the best decision I ever made because then it taught me something. I could have never, we custom grazed quite a few cattle. I could have never done that back then because I had to own everything. That's what cowboys do. Big bunch of cows, a big bunch of land, and you own it all, even if you go wrong. and it taught me how to do things different, which our 2 main holistic goals: bring profitability back and improve our quality of life. And sometimes neither one of those works the greatest, but I can tell you our profitability went just like this, and it's a whole lot of things. But I'm the most proud of bringing our soil health back. We're not near where I want to be. I don't know if I'll ever be there. If you ever watch the national video for the National Environmental Stewardship Award, you know, you don't even know you say stuff like that. At the end of it, I said something like that. I'll never get to where I want to be. I just want to keep pulling up that hill and making progress. And it's kind of true. And I never realized I even said it until I watched the video. I'm like, wow, I didn't know I was so intelligent.
He even surprised himself.
Yeah, that's right. What else can I tell you about this? You got to keep us on track, Jay. I know you got
Average year, how deep does the snow get in this?
Well, you know, those
Average,
100-year those 100-year snowfalls, because it didn't come all at once, you know, it would settle, and you know, you might have a couple of feet, and those cows will graze right through it.
Okay.
Now, you've got to have a backup plan, and I learned a valuable lesson 3 years ago. We had 75 inches in 3 weeks and 3 major blizzards, and I lost cattle. And you couldn't drive across this stuff with a tractor. And I was just beating myself up, and yet in the big picture, yeah, you lost a few cattle that you should have sorted off. And I always tell people, if you're going to do this, there's a few cows in your herd or a few calves in your herd, don't leave them out here. Because they'll die, and then you'll think the whole system's broke, and they're just crappy cattle. They should have been gone. But when you leave them here, that's the ones you lose, like we did, and then you beat yourself up and feel bad about it. And so, but you have to have, you just can't go out. You can go out and sell all your hay equipment. I know people that have, but then you got to buy it, because you got to have a backup plan. In a year like last year, where it's really hard to find, that's tough. So we've elected to keep it, but we went from putting up 5,000-6,000 big round bales to 1,000 or so. Now we put up more this year because the hay crop is good, and we didn't have 2 bales left on this place. And it was time to build a little resilience back in the hay yard, which my boy said for 10 years, what are you keeping all this hay for? I said insurance policy, and then we used it all up in 2 years, and they're like, oh, I get it. So you've got to have a backup plan. But even if you can pull a month off, 2 months off, start out slow, start out with a month. God, it starts to add up. And yet, you know, and I spent half of my life on behalf of NDSU. I was the first, North Dakota State University is the only land grant in the nation that has a group of 10 producers that have fiscal authority over all the budget decisions on research and extension. I went to the legislature and helped them get that. They were scared to death. And I said, hey, we need to listen to you, you listen to us, we're going to come up with a better product for the taxpayers. But my point is, they don't look at this stuff very well. There's bright pieces here and there. But man, when I changed calving dates, I went to the Animal Science Department because I got a degree from them. And I said, show me all the research on May, June calving. I got a paragraph. I said, don't do it. Dumb idea. No, I didn't say that. But they don't study that sort of stuff, you know. And again, they do good things. It's not trying to run them under the bus, but I get frustrated that they don't chime into some of this. Find the weak spots. Help us out a bit. And we're doing a conversion. I don't know what it's like in Kansas. There's only 25% of the native range left in North Dakota. I think we'll lose 10% more because we're not paying attention. And they're dumping boatloads of money into crop production from the government level. And we're seeing land prices going like this and land rent prices going like that. And where's the incentive? I said it the other day to a group that was here. I said, if I didn't have kids coming back, I couldn't break this whole place up. But I'll bet I could break 90% of it up because they don't really care if they get a crop. They're kind of protected right now. And I'm not trying to be cruel, but we got to be honest about this. And I could make a crap load of money. And if I didn't care, which I do, and I wouldn't be able to sleep with myself, I get that. But if money was my object, like I know quite a few people it is, you know, and they've had a long life and hasn't been all that rosy, and I get it. But a ranch just up the road, 130-year ranch, some doctors came in, bought up, broke a bunch of that pasture up, and it's just a shame. And then it blew all winter. And the first year was a total loss. You went by some of it. It's in wheat this year. It blew until they lucked out. We got rain and it came up and it stopped. I drove by it and it just got done combine. I said to my wife, I wonder how many days before the disc comes in, tears that dang straw down. And she said, and it'll blow all damn winter. You know, I'm not, again, trying to pick on them, but we got to be honest about these things. We got to work together. If we're going to save the grasslands and build soil health, you know, Dwayne, you had and Jay and all you guys, exemplary career and did a lot. But we still have only touched it, haven't we? I mean, you know, I think there's, and when I get negative, then I run into some really good things. But I just spoke in Ekalaka, Montana. I didn't see a cross fence in 100 miles, you know, and I'm like, it was drop dead gorgeous. The grass out there was beautiful this year. And I'm just like, I know that's, you know, it's big country. I was asked the question, how do we start pastures? Well, that was when Jay and I talked out there, but pastures are 10,000 acres each. How would you start? I said, just split one and move them from one side to the other and see if you like what it does. And if it does, then maybe split another one or split that one again. But if I tell you to go put water in and do all this fancying, you're going to be overwhelmed. And I know several neighbors that have done NRCS. A couple of years, it was more work, had to think. Gates are all open. It's easy to drop them off in May and pick them up in November. And they don't see the damage. I can watch the diversity going down, down, down. Excuse me, but when you're there every day, you don't really notice it. And if they'd leave for a couple of years, come back, they'd really notice it. So I think, I just admire that you guys and the No Till on the Plains is doing this. Getting people out, getting to see, you know, just not that I'm so smart or you see so much here, but it gets you thinking, it gets you out of the box, gets you, what can we do different? How can we direct policy and things start? We've somehow got to level the playing field between cattle and crops, or we're going to be in a serious trouble. I know a lot of people here, because they've sold their cows for drought, they're not coming back in. A lot of that land's going to get broke up. You know, it's not, you know, as you go west and get more mountains, that's harder, but in a lot of this plains, you can break up a lot of it. And that's not good for our whole darn ecosystem, is it, if we lose all